you very much for inviting me down tonight. I appreciate the invitation. I think it's just it is an important opportunity to discuss the issues around why we need to keep the trade union link within the Labour Party. I mean, normally when I speak at these events, I often point that although it's called a Defender Link, I mean, to me and to my union, this is about democracy. This is about the opportunity to make sure that working people have a voice in politics. I think it's such a key issue for working people today, to make sure that we have that opportunity to have the opportunity to influence politics. Because when you actually look at the political agenda in this country, you can clearly see that the influence of the establishment and the recent events at INEOS show you what happens when the government is driven by private funds, when it's driven by private initiative money. It demonstrates how, instead of serving in the interests of the people, it serves in the interests of narrow-minded individuals. And I think INEOS is a prime example of why we need to make sure working people are kept involved in politics. Now, a lot of this was brought about, and the reason why I talk about INEOS is because a lot of this was brought about because of the incident that happened allegedly in Falkirk. But the reality is, this is an attack that's been going on now since 1979. This has been a constant attack on the trade union movement. I think there was some information that was released under some 30-year rule that demonstrated that Thatcher's intention to wither away the Labour links with the trade union movement. I mean, and what Ed Miliband has done appears to have played into that aim of watering down the trade union link. When today, more than ever, you know, within the Labour Party, it's essential that the trade unions are there to influence the policies, because we're connected to the people on the streets. There's 6.5 million going on to 7 million people. 7 million working people. And they're all working people. You know, those members, they're all working people. You know, the very people that they often talk about as the hard-working people of this country. You know, the very people that they claim that they want to develop policies on behalf of. But yet they have a tendency to think that being linked with it is somehow, you know, bad, and it's not the right thing to do. It's an apparent problem for them that they don't understand or how to deal with. I mean, they should be proud of the fact that there's 7 million people affiliated to the Labour Party. They should be proud of the fact that all of those working people, you know, are associated with them, and they should be shouting from the rooftops about the fact that the trade union movement set up the Labour Party and continues to want to play a role in it. It isn't something they should shy away from. Wouldn't it be great to see the Labour Party defend its links with the trade unions, as opposed to playing into the hands of Cameron, who constantly attacks the trade unions in the House of Commons? There is absolutely nothing wrong with representing a nurse. There's nothing wrong with representing, you know, a healthcare worker, a teacher, you know, a baker. You know, there's nothing wrong with talking on behalf of ordinary working people. And that's the bit that I'm really struggling, my union's really struggling to understand. Why Ed Miliband, at a time when 68% of the population are demanding the renationalisation of the energy companies, and even more are asking for the renationalisation of the water. You know, and probably about 80 and 90% want national controls of the banks. You know, that at that particular moment in time, the Labour Party wants to consider whether or not, you know, it should have a voice that's based on collectivism. When the result of not having a collective voice in workplaces is what part of the reasons why there's a race to the bottom. Part of the reasons why wages are deteriorating is because there's nobody in there to negotiate on behalf of working people. So again, it comes back to, why on earth would the Labour Party, at this moment in time, want to take away people's opportunity to play a collective role? Because that's what's going to get us out of the mess we're in. It's by being together. It's by being part of a collective movement. And that's why I am so proud of, I mean, I don't know if anybody knows about the Hovis dispute. You know, the Hovis dispute was an ideal example of the Labour movement. You know, it talks about collectivism, it talks about how the labour movement there, you know, supported, you know, our members at Wigan and made sure that, you know, that in the first week of that dispute, because of the support that those people got, they succeeded in ensuring that 24 zero-hour contract workers, 24 people, got full-time permanent employed jobs. That's what the labour movement did, and that was because it took the Labour politician, which was Lisa Nandy, who we were very, very grateful for the support she gave us. It gave us all of those organisations like Unite the Resistance, who came out and supported our members and stood on those picket lines. It was Unison, the GMB, PCS, the RMT, Unite. I mean, Unite came along and gave our members £5,000 to make sure they could be starved back to work. And that wasn't the only trade union that donated money. But it was a prime example of all of the trade union movement, all of those different organisations against the cuts, whether it's DPAC, you know, the disabled people against the cuts, like I say, the Unite the Resistance. I mean, we had Socialist Workers, Communist Party, Green Party, you name it, they came down. And all of those people were coming down because of the reasons why those people went into dispute, because they recognised the importance of the dispute. It was a shame the TUC didn't, because unfortunately the TUC wouldn't allow us to have an emergency motion at conference. But sometimes it demonstrates how far behind the TUC is, and maybe that might be one of the reasons why sometimes the Labour Party, you know, is also far behind, because it's got to catch up. Because people on the streets and people in the houses and people in communities are on a different political agenda from most of our politicians. You know, and the second week of their dispute, I mean, the mass picketing, you know, all of those people from the northwest coming together, all of those people coming out and supporting people 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, again, a demonstration of working people standing up with other working people. You know, it was a collective approach. It was all about making sure that a group of workers who had taken that decision to go out on strike and lose money, so other people would have the opportunity to earn the same rates of pay, have a contract of employment, have the rights to holiday and sick pay and pensions. All of those issues that a lot of workers and people take for granted, that was the reason why those people in Wigan went on strike, not for a penny piece for themselves. They did it because they wanted to make sure that the people that was going to work alongside them got exactly the same entitlement that they got. And they did it for those principles, and the whole of the Labour movement makes it proud to be part of the Labour movement. And that's the real difficulty I have with this issue within the Labour Party and the Link, because he should be proud of it. There's nothing wrong with representing working people, and I know I've said that already, but you can't say it hard and long enough. You can't say it, you know, as often as we need to say it. There's absolutely nothing wrong in our communities and in our society standing side by side with one another. And collectivism is the approach that we need to get ourselves out of the problems that we face. Collectivism is the only way to make sure that the race to the bottom stops. The only way we're going to address the situation of poor pay, you know, and 0-hour contracts and vulnerable work, and the fact that, you know, people can't plan their lives, is by coming together and collectively taking that, you know, to the forefront of how we deal with working people's issues. We have to make sure that that voice is heard. And the Labour Party is the best opportunity that working people have. And that's why it comes back to this issue of democracy. Because we've had a situation in our history. You know, our history has been, you know, littered with examples, you know, of times when we only had 2 parties in this country, both financed by individuals' money and corporate wealth. And we find ourselves looking across the water in another country where you've got the Democrats and the Republicans, both parties financed by big cash donors with no political voice for ordinary working people, and the poverty that they have over there. I mean, looking on the streets of Brighton coming here tonight, the poverty, but all those people sleeping on the streets, it's shocking, you know. But if you take out the collective voice from the Labour Party, where is that going to come from? Because the big corporations aren't going to say, oh, I was walking on the streets of Brighton and saw a few homeless people. They don't probably wouldn't even walk the streets, they drive by. You know, so where's that information going to come from? Who's going to push those people's issues? If you take the collective voice out of the Labour Party, and that's why it's so important that we keep it, if you take that collective voice out, who's going to speak on behalf of the ordinary people? What it will become, and what the Labour Party will become, is little more than based on the popularity poll. Because it will be like a fan club for the leader, because that's how your membership will be driven. You know, you take out any debate, which obviously they've done a lot of. They've taken out the debates at the conferences, so it's, they're all stage managed, whether it's Tory, Liberal or Labour, they're all stage managed. You know, so they've taken that debate away. But you take out the rank and file membership, the collective part of the trade union, and what have you got left? You'll get a fanzine. And that's what the Labour Party will turn into. It will turn into a fanzine. And if the leader's popular, you'll get a big membership. If the leader's not popular, he'll lose his membership. You know, I mean, it's an absolutely ridiculous situation as well, and it can't play very well into the policies of, how we address the cost of living crisis if we're going to start asking people to pay like 25, 40 quid to become a member of the Labour Party. I mean, how on earth can they afford it? I mean, at a time when people are choosing between heating and eating, at a time when people have to go out and buy kids' uniforms and find the cheapest they can get, how on earth are they going to find that 25, 30 quid or whatever the price is that they're going to put on it to be a member of the Labour Party? It's an absolutely stupid conversation to be having when we should be concentrating on the real issues and making sure that the policies of the Labour Party, because that's why they lost the election. They lost the election not because of the links with the trade unions. In fact, more people believe the trade unions than believe the Labour Party. I mean, if you look at the opinion polls, you find that, if people are going to trust somebody, more people trust trade unions than they do the politicians. And, and the same goes with the media. And it's funny that it's a media and a political, move to end the link. And I suppose one of the reasons why they're afraid. The establishment is probably afraid of the fact that, trade unions, when they get together, hold and wield a lot of power. But that's right, because of who we are and what we represent. Every policy that I follow, my members decide on it. Every rule that my trade union upholds, my members decided what those rules were. I mean, they call me a baron, they call me all sorts of different names, but I was elected by my members. They had the right to take part in a vote. Every single one of them. Probably more democratic than the politicians have ever been. They don't get floated in as a trade union leader. You have to comply with laws. Obviously, when you look at politicians, it would be nice if some of them had to comply with similar types of laws. I mean, it's an absolutely sad state of affairs that we're having to go around the country, and I'm having to come here to talk to you about defending the link with the Labour Party, when I would rather be coming here and rallying and saying we need to get on the streets and go out there and put our argument for why we need to win those European elections, or when the council elections come, or when the general election comes, what we should be doing in the workplaces to make sure people understand. I mean, from our perspective, from the Bakers Union perspective, one of the things that we will be reminding our members of, if we're still part of the Labour Party, if they haven't kicked us out, because obviously, that's what Defend the Link's all about. It's about stopping them from kicking us out. Because we will reconsider our position if they kick us out. But we would rather be going round and saying to our members, you can't trust the Tories. Look at what they were going to do to the pasties. Look at how they were going to, hammer ordinary working people with the pasty tax. That was an attack on your dinner. Ordinary working people, their dinner time's being attacked. And once they float with it, the next time they'll do it. One thing you can be certain of, if the Tories get back in again, that pasty tax will be in. They may have currently decided that they're going to backtrack on a few things because they're a bit unpopular, but for certain, if they get re-elected all of those policies that they've recently jettisoned will be back. All of those U-turns that Cameron's performed will be U-turned back. All of those issues, you know, that impact on hard-working people, as they like to call them, you know, all of those problems and issues we face in the workplace. Like, if you're sacked unfairly, a £1,200 charge for justice. How does that help? How does that help somebody in work? If your boss doesn't pay you, it'll cost you £390. I would rather be going out and talking to people about that than saying, Ed Miliband, you've made a mistake, don't go to war with us. Go to war with the Tories. Those are your enemies, we're not your enemies. Let's highlight what they've done. Let's highlight how they've attacked health and safety, making workplaces less safe. So when our children go into a workplace, they'll be less safe. You know, those are the issues we should be dealing with. You know, those are the targets we should have in mind when we have meetings like this. Not the argument about why we have to continue with a collective voice within the Labour Party. Because you take that out of the Labour Party and it becomes a Social Democrat Party. You know, and that's what it is. You know, it's not a Labour Party without the Labour movement in it. And the Labour movement is not the Labour Party. The Labour movement is a collection of organisations and people, you know, who believe in working class issues and workplace issues and political issues that represent working class issues, and trade unions form a part of that and give people an opportunity also to get involved in politics. You know, like every trade union, you know, our union's no different, and Unite are no different to any other trade union either. You know, Unite tried to get people into politics. We've tried to get people into politics. I asked the question of Ed Miliband, based on you know, the position of the LRC, not on the position of a trade union, but on the position of the LRC, about why is it, you know, that you've done so much to break down ethnicity in the Labour Party, you know, for women in the party, you know, for the disabled in the party. But the party is also supposed to represent ordinary working class people. And yet the representation in Parliament doesn't have them. You know, when will the Labour Party actually reflect the people it purports to represent? Ordinary working class people. You know? And Ed Miliband thought that was a great idea. You know, I mean, and I asked him at a Chulo meeting just after he'd been elected. And I remember turning around to Paul Kenny and saying, Paul, we need to be sitting down and talking about that. And now we're faced, because Unite tried to do it, with a situation where we're being told that it's not a good thing to have the trade union voice in the Labour Party. I mean, I do hope that the story that was in the Guardian this morning is correct, you know, and I do hope that any trade union that's considering, you know, doing a deal, you know, understands the consequences of that deal. The consequences of that deal is to end collectivism and a political voice for ordinary people. No trade union should do a deal on that. It's not ours to give. It's not ours to do a deal on. Our position should be very, very clear. You know, we are affiliated to the Labour Party. We have a collective voice within that Labour Party, and we fight to maintain that collective voice within the Labour Party. If we give that up, then we should hang ourselves heads in shame, and we should never call ourselves a trade union again, because no trade union should have any trucking with it. And any that does, like I say, isn't a trade union in my opinion, because they're failing and letting down their members, because their members are entitled to a right to have a collective political voice, and their members are entitled to make sure that they're given the opportunity for the Labour Party to hear what they've got to say, and then hopefully one day realise that the problem isn't in the working class areas. It's when you listen to those people in progress and people with the self-interest. Those are the real problems we have.